Yep.
Okay, so we'll have a call to order. Let's go with the pledge. Jan, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this point, and then we could do some organizational as we go. We're very glad to have the officials from Barrington, Dan and Dave. Dan, would you introduce yourself, and Dave? And they're going to speak about model number 3, Barrington model, and we'll discuss that, and they could give us the background of it in some thoughts of it, and then when they're done, we can excuse them and go back to the other tasks at hand. So with no further ado, I want to thank both Dave and Dan for the time here, and thank them as we embark upon this journey. Dan, Dave?
Thank you, Earl. Thank you for having us here today, and glad to provide some assistance. Dan Mullis, Superintendent for the Barrington School District.
I'm Dave Gibson. I'm the chair of the Barrington School Board.
And would you like us to start with just an overview and some background information about our contracts that were negotiated?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to have Mr. Gibson start because he certainly was here when the contracts began for Barrington School District with our receiving school district. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Oh, thank you, and yeah, thanks again for having both of us as part of this call. So the brief history of Barrington's school choice model was, at one point in time, we built a middle school in 2004. The land that we had selected for that middle school could accommodate a high school. So the grand plan for those who were on the board at the time, I was not one of those, was that we would go and build a high school when appropriate. At that time, our kids were primarily going to Dover High School, where we had a tuition agreement, and they were our school of record. Concurrently, we had students who could go to Co-Brown. For students who went to Co-Brown, they had to apply to get in. If they got in, the district would offset the tuition up to the amount that we paid Dover, and then the families would be responsible for the difference between the Dover tuition and the Co-Brown tuition. A little later on, we developed, or we had a similar model with Oyster River. The group was relatively small that was there, but the same thing. They could go to Oyster River, a very limited number of seats at Oyster River, and the family was responsible for the difference, the delta between our Dover High School contract and Oyster River's contract. So the flexibility that allowed us to do that before we memorialized this was the fact that Dover had a real concern about space in their buildings. So they were happy to not have us send all of our kids to Dover because they had a real concern that they wouldn't be able to accommodate them. So that structure that was put in place was, first and foremost, was done because there was that concern that Dover wouldn't be able to take all of the kids. So when the Dover contract, started to, come to a time where it was going to sunset, really there were a lot of things going on in the community. So there were some folks who wanted to continue with Dover, but there were also folks who were thinking about building a high school on that piece of land where our middle school sits right now. The decision was made. The decision was made for us because that contract was expiring around the 2008-2009 time period when all the building aid in the state dried up. And we were obviously in the midst of a pretty significant recession. So I, along with other folks on the board, decided that, it would probably be in our best interest to try to find a way that we could accommodate, a number of schools and not build a high school. So, the process was pretty simple. It was long, but simple. We had any high school that wanted to receive Barrington schools came in. We had 2 or 3 community nights where those schools came in. They did a 30-minute, 45-minute presentation, took questions from the public. So basically they were, providing overviews on their schools, the curriculum, what they could offer Barrington students. Dover did that. Oyster River came, Co-Brown came, Somersworth came. There might have been another school. I just can't remember who it was. We had a series after those presentations. We had a series of just general community forums. Seeing where the public was with regards to, school choice versus contracting directly with a particular school. Overwhelmingly, the community liked the idea of choice. So what we did, and I think the reason I'm here is because I was the one who negotiated it at the time. We negotiated a standard school of record high school tuition agreement with Dover, and concurrently we did that with Oyster River. Co-Brown, because of the relationship that we have with Co-Brown and the fact that it's really sort of a charter academy, it operates a little bit differently. We didn't need to have a tuition agreement with them just because of the structure that they have. So essentially, that's the process that we went through. We negotiated the contracts. We had to get the community approval. We're an SB2 town. I don't know if you folks are, but we had to get the contracts approved. And, we just kind of rolled into it from there. And they were all approved overwhelmingly at the time. So it was a huge capital offset for us. So we were very excited about it. You're muted, Jan.
No, I can't get unmuted. I was gonna say, if I could ask a couple questions. So is there a limit to how many can go each year?
So for Dover, there is not a limit. Nor is there a limit for Co-Brown. We have currently at Oyster River, we have a total enrollment limit of 200. We tiered up to it with them. So we started at a lower number, and then as the contract matured, it basically came up to 200. And we have a minimum too. I think our minimum is 125, something like that, in the low 100s. Keep in mind the operating thesis for Oyster River at the time was they had just done a significant investment in a high school. And, while Dover was, in some ways worried about their high school being too small, Oyster River was coming to the realization that their high school that they just bonded was too big, and they had a lot of empty seats. So the numbers that we negotiated was really the number that got Oyster River up to that sweet spot where they wanted to be as a high school for size. So that's the reason for the cap.
Okay, I have to read in my head. This is your whole high school. You don't have a high school, so everybody goes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
How do kids choose between Dover and Oyster River? Do they have to apply or?
Well, there's 3 schools, so it's Dover, Oyster River, and Co-Brown. In theory, we have an agreement with a soft agreement with Somersworth, so they could go to Somersworth as well. Dover, there's Dover and Oyster River. There's no application process. However, in the case of Oyster River, if there are more students that want to go than seats that are available, we do a lottery. So no application. If there aren't enough seats available, we do a lottery. Co-Brown, in theory, requires an application, but we have a multi-decade relationship with them. And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think for Barrington they go through an application process. They just have to register and I think put in a technology deposit or some sort of thing like that. Yep. But essentially their policy is that they reserve the right to refuse any kid, but they haven't for Barrington.
Okay. How about transportation?
So that's an interesting question. So we've always provided transportation to Dover. We did not provide transportation to Co-Brown or Oyster River until 3 years ago, maybe. And we elected to provide, what I would call a skeleton bus route in Barrington. So it doesn't stop at every street. It has a handful of, each bus has a handful of stops, and then they bring the kids into school. It's utilized, but I wouldn't say it's overly utilized. I mean, it's a typical high school situation. So most of the kids are driving in, but we do provide basic transportation.
So is it in the end of their 8th grade year? How do they let you know which school they want to go to?
Well, so yes, it's in their 8th grade year. It's not the end of 8th grade year. The school, the long pole in the tent with regards to high school is obviously Oyster River, because that's the only school that has a seat cap. So we don't necessarily need notification for Dover, but we have an application deadline, or not an application deadline. You have to submit your intent, your desire to go to Oyster River by the end of January, I believe, right? So you have to submit and proof of residency and all that other stuff. You have to submit that by the end of January. If there are enough seats, then we just go ahead and notify them that they can go to Oyster River. If there aren't enough seats, then we have a lottery. I think we've had a lottery 3 or 4 times, and when we've never had a kid not get in. So what happens is you have a lot of people who think they might be interested in Oyster River, so they sign up for the lottery, and then when their number's called, they opt not to go, and it opens up a seat for someone else. So the bottom line is has never been an instance where a Barrington student who wanted to attend Oyster River did not attend Oyster River because of the lottery process. It always works itself out, and they've been very flexible with us as well.
All right, I think that's all my questions.
Now, is there a date that they must commit, because the receiving school, in terms of funds and in terms of having to staff their school, would need to know how many students they're going to receive? Because when the budget is built up, they have to know the amount of money they're going to be receiving, and the people making the schedules would have to ascertain what the class loads are.
So again, for Oyster River, we go through the process the very beginning part of February, and the student has to commit within a week after the lottery. So they have to be locked in. With regards to the other schools, I mean, typically they're around the same time. Kids sign up and they tell us where they're going. And we're not a big district, so we're pretty consistent as far as our enrollment at any of these schools. So the variation in our head count doesn't really affect them from a budget standpoint, and they don't budget the revenue. This is unanticipated revenue. So the school budget is done, solely on operating costs, not on any sort of anticipated revenue. So that's not a big deal. But once again, we're talking about, we have a class size of 100. It's, usually 50 of them go to Oyster River. So now you got 50 kids between 2 schools. There just isn't enough variation to really, to really throw, any sort of wrinkle into either of the schools. And they're both happy to get the money, because remember, we're paying tuition. It's not like a town school. So, with every unanticipated kid comes an unanticipated check.
Yeah, see, Wakefield has 2 schools. They can send to or Wentworth, and Rochester has an area agreement with them where they receive 9/10 of the kids. You know what I'm saying? They guarantee them 9/10. So yours is not the same, where you don't guarantee within your area agreement a specific number of students per year.
No.
Correct?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. Yeah. So we don't. I mean, other than the fact that we have a contractual minimum with Oyster River, but that's very conservative.
So Earl, the other thing that we do is in the fall, we meet with each of the school districts and we provide an estimate as part of our budget process with those receiving school districts that Mr. Gibson's speaking about. And then as we get closer, that first week in February, if we need to have a lottery for Oyster River, that occurs. And then, as Mr. Gibson said, that second week in February, a week later, there has to be that commitment to Oyster River. And then that mid-February timeframe for the other two high schools, both Co-Brown Northwood Academy and for Dover High School as well. So by mid-February, mid to late February, we have a pretty good idea, definitive idea, as do the receiving school districts, of the enrollment and tuition costs.
When you determine your tuition costs, is there's a flat fee that you pay each of the host schools, am I correct?
There is. So we budget, Oyster River and Co-Brown are the same, essentially the same tuition. So we budget that, and then we make some assumptions about, based on historicals, what we're going to pay Dover. I mean, how many students will go to Dover, and then we budget accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about the sped needs of the students, the special ed? Do you pay a certain amount per student in special ed, or is it prescriptive as to what the IEP is and what the needs of that?
Well, some services are included in our contract. So for example, Dover, which is typically the least restrictive school for us, unless there's and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, unless there's a one-on-one or an individual that's needed, a full-time individual that's needed for a student, our special ed costs are baked into our tuition.
Mm-hmm.
Oyster River, we have a different agreement. It's a little bit more a la carte, where we pay based on the needs and what's required. And Co-Brown, is also a sort of a similar model, but we don't have a tremendous amount of need there. And now Oyster River. So just to be clear, so in this arrangement, Oyster River and Dover are now dual schools of record. So Barrington has two schools of record. Co-Brown's not a school of record. So I don't think we have any obligation to send any identified student to Co-Brown. They're not a school of record.
Now, does the group have some more things to ask? We're just getting involved here. And I thought from an introductory standpoint, we take a look at the models out there. Right now, once our next step, which really is the first step, is we have to ascertain which schools would want to be host schools. Would it be okay if the group that is working on the Barrington model, as we call it, if they get back in touch with you as we look at more specifics, Dave?
Certainly, yeah, absolutely not a problem. So are you folks, just out of curiosity, are you looking to sunset Newt as a high school?
We're exploring options that would be available to us.
No.
So I will, not yes or no. Can I ask questions about CTE? So can your kids go to the Tri-City, Somersworth, Dover, Rochester? And then let's say you have kids at Dover that then go to, let's say, Rochester for CTE. Do you do that transportation, or just Dover?
No, I believe Dover does. So if they or the students on their own, right?
The students on their own, typically we provide, obviously, as Mr. Gibson said, transportation to Dover, but transportation to Somersworth or to Rochester CTE programs, that would be based upon the student or the family.
Okay.
And I know Durham partners with, who do they use? They use Somersworth as well?
Dover School District.
They use Dover, yeah. So a lot, I would say, if I was going to just go out on a guess, I would say probably 50% of our kids that go to Dover are going to Dover specifically for the CTC program. I would say, wouldn't you, Dan?
I think yes, I would agree with that. And I think as Dave said at the beginning too, what's really worked, the relationship has worked great with all of our schools because, and Dave can speak to this as well, and he did at the beginning, is it provided families and students with choices. So you could make the choices, based upon what is best for the student and the family. And that, in my experience, it's worked very, very well, just to have those different opportunities for our students and for our families, those different choices.
Do you ever have students who change their mind about a high school, like the second year in or something? And how does that work? Is it flexible? Is it?
So you can, yeah, by and large, you can change high schools. I don't think there's ever been any real resistance to changing high schools. I would say this as a board member, someone who's been, who's sort of monitored this from the beginning, and also as a parent, the downside to, one of the downsides to the upside to school choice is you have choice, right? The downside to school choice is that you have choice. So for young kids, and probably more so parents of those young kids, they get wrapped around the axle thinking that they're picking a four-year university, when the reality is by and large, while all three of the schools are different, they're all very good schools in their own right. And probably just about any family would be happy at any one of those schools if there wasn't choice. So there's a lot of drama usually for those, the oldest kid in a family, and picking the school and going through all the machinations. But the amount of transience between school, it's very, very low. I mean, very low. I mean, usually once they get into a school and they make the choice, unless there's some sort of really, really big issue, and it's usually, I would say, based on what I know anecdotally, it's usually a social issue and not a school quality or academic issue, they stay where they are. I mean, I think I can count on, a couple fingers how many people each year, change schools.
How about making the transition from Barrington, which is probably a smaller school district, compared to going to Dover or an Oyster River? Is that a smooth transition? Is it difficult for kids? What feedback do you get from families?
So the feedback I've gotten is that the transition's relatively smooth. I mean, it's not they don't jump in like, they don't jump in head first. So, I mean, 8th grade, they all, pre-COVID, they all usually do tours, and they have shadow days where they'll go in and spend the day with, fellow Barrington students. All three of the schools are very good about open houses and what to expect your first year. Think of it very much like college orientation. All three schools do a really, really good job, making sure that the kids come in and they transition well. I mean, yeah, Dover's a big school, but that's usually the reason why the kids are going there is because they wanted a big school. So while there might be some adjusting that occurs, it's self-selected, right? So it's not too bad. But no, all of our districts have given us really good feedback with regards to how well Barrington students matriculate in. And, and the real litmus test is, we view them as Barrington students because they're our kids. Once they get into the schools, they're Dover kids, they're Oyster River kids, they're Co-Brown kids. It's ubiquitous. My daughters both go to Co-Brown, and when I see their circle of friends, it's, Stratford, Nottingham, and they're all over the place. They don't identify by town. Once they get in there, after a couple months, they matriculate in there pretty well.
I did have another question. So is your per grade size 100? So 100 freshman, 100 sophomore?
About that.
Yep.
And what's your minimum that has to go to Oyster River?
So total enrollment for a minimum, as Mr. Gibson mentioned, is 125 for 9 through 12.
Okay. So 125 out of your 400 kids?
Yes.
Yep.
435, I think, is our exact number right now for high school, but somewhere 425.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting things you said, as they work on the models and then they look at the total cost, the legal aspect of having to pay to transport the students. What is the legality of that? You had mentioned a little bit of the different types of arrangements in terms of how you transport. I think, when
Well-
you spoke, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, Dover, we hit when Dover was our only school of record, we transported to Dover. And for the first 5 years after we memorialized high school choice, we didn't transport to any of the other schools. And in my understanding, unless the rules have changed, is that we're under no obligation to provide transportation to any high school, with the exception of special ed and out of district. So, anything that we do just because it's something that it's a service that we want to offer our kids. And at some point in time, and I can't remember, my mind is fading. At some point in time, 3 or 4 years ago, we had some spare bus capacity, and there were some folks who had expressed an interest, and we said, yeah, we'll throw a bus at each of the schools and see if people, want to ride it. And if they do, since we were in the middle of our transportation contract anyway, we would, see how it worked out. And so far it's worked out well. I mean, it's low ridership, but it works out. But there's no obligation to provide transportation.
And Earl, if
Back
this
when,
is, oh.
I was gonna say, back when I lived in Barrington, I went to Spalding. And so I graduated almost 40 years ago. And there was a bus from Barrington to Spalding at that time. So it's been that way for a while. And then a bunch of us, once, somebody got a license, then we all carpooled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need a bus to get to school for the first 10 days of your freshman year, because that's how long it takes to meet somebody in your town that has a car.
Exactly. I used to ride with Paul Fraze. So
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I just saw him a couple days ago.
yeah.
Earl, one of the things that we looked at with high
Dave
school
Fraze, I'm sorry, his
transportation,
brother.
which was my second year in the district, is working with Dave. We created a transportation committee, a survey for families. And then, as Dave mentioned, we really looked at our bus ridership throughout the district and at the high school level. And we didn't have to add more buses. And because of that, we were able to provide transportation not only to Dover High School, which we had been as our school of record, but we were able to also offer bus transportation for high school for Oyster River and Co-Brown Northwood Academy. So we looked about 3-4 years ago now at our bus ridership, transportation survey for families, and basically looked at our current allocated buses that we had and didn't have to add more buses to the district. So it worked out well.
Really, as we go, we have some more things to ask you, but I really mean sincerely that Dan and Dave, I know the kind of work that Dan does. This is the first night I've met Dave, but we have to do a thorough investigation here of this whole thing. And there's been various works of this done. Nate, our BA, and Laura are working on a task force trying to look back at specifically what has been done in the past. And this has been a recurring thing that the community has kind of taken a look at. And as we go within each task force, we'll really look deeply into each part of this. Now, Lynette is looking at, Lynette, I see you came on.
Oh my gosh. I didn't have anything to go. My husband had to bring me in a different way.
No,
I didn't have any way to get in. Sorry.
Okay. I know you've done a great deal of work. Do you have questions for them about how they identified the schools to enter into host schools, or some questions about as we reach out to the schools? Do you have a question?
I guess I thought this meeting was going to be totally different than what this is, because I thought we were going to find out and set our platform before we started asking questions. Because it doesn't seem that we have our platform set up first for each individual group.
Okay, we're going to meet with them, and then we're going to go back to each. What we're doing is looking at the model that they have.
Nathan and Tammy both had questions, Earl.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, you can go first.
No, I think we're going to ask the same question, so go ahead.
Do you guys happen to have a contract that we could look at? That from Dover or
Yeah, we can send you both. It's their public documents, so
Yeah.
we can send you those contracts.
That'd be great, thanks.
So I guess you weren't asking the same one. I was gonna ask about tuition. Are you at liberty to talk about what the tuition is for each of those schools?
Yeah, right now, Dan, what Dover's around 13 something thousand.
Yep. That's
And
correct.
then Oyster River Co Brown is at the 16.5 level, something like that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Now, do you
Nick?
pay only a portion of Co-Brown and Oyster River, and then the families pay another portion?
No, we pay
Not the
all
Oyster
of Dover,
Co-Brown.
and we pay all of Oyster River.
Okay.
Okay. In theory, Co-Brown, we will only pay up to those two schools. So if Co-Brown is higher than Oyster River or Dover, then the family technically is responsible for the difference.
Okay.
Headmaster Smith is not a young guy who just got into education. Believe it or not, Co-Brown's tuition usually comes in like $1 less than Oyster River. So they keep they keep a tight look at it's their rival school. So Co-Brown pays very close attention to what the Oyster River tuition rate is, and they coincidentally come in at a rate that is usually within a cup of coffee of Oyster River. So, but in theory though, the delta for Co-Brown would be for the parents, families.
And there's only a certain portion of students that Co-Brown will take, right? Is there a smaller number of students that Co-Brown takes?
No, they'll take as many students that
want to go.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
But it's interesting that you ask about tuition, because I mean that's really, you guys are it's gonna be an interesting process, I'm sure, especially if you're still taking a look at high school and building a high school potentially, or whatever it is that you're doing in-house potentially. That was, there was a portion of our community that really wanted us to build a high school, and
I remember that.
And the reality is that people get blinded by, they do sort of lazy math, and they take a bond and they divide it out over 20 years, and they say, look how inexpensive it is over a 20-year period. And, we're going to hire, some teachers and some paras and a couple janitors and a principal, and they do some, quick back of the napkin math. And they say, it's going to be incredibly affordable. Well, that's predicated on the notion of, first of all, when you have a high school, it brings your labor wages up all the way through the collective bargaining agreement. So sort of a rising tide lifts, all boats when it comes to pay. And second of all, you go out and build a $40 million or $50 million school, you're going to replace a roof every 20 years, and they don't give them away. I mean, I think we did an elementary school roof and it was almost $1 million. And parking lots, I mean, we're spending a couple $100,000 just on sealing parking lots, right, for our schools. And when you start adding all of those things that go along with keeping a school running over a 20-year period, and you take a look at what the real carried costs will be, writing a check for $13 or $14 or $15,000 per student is actually A, less expensive, but B, it also takes a lot of the vacillation out of the budget process, right? We know there's going to be some increase. We can predict it. We can smooth. We can save, and we can save for unanticipated increases in headcount and things like that. But it's actually it's been pretty cost effective for us, and it allowed us to focus our capital on the buildings that we already had. And by the way, at the time that we did this, the buildings that we had were in, fairly desperate need of attention, whether it was roofs at our elementary school, we built an early childhood learning center, we did parking lots, redid all of the mechanicals in all of the buildings. it allowed us really to focus on K through 8 and allow schools that all do a great job, at 9 through 12, just let them do it. And we were fortunate to have 3 really good schools around us. So there was really no reason to reinvent the wheel for us, at least.
Now I do have a question. Are the kids that come from outside of your communities, both your communities, are they allowed to participate in sports and have the same advantages as children that belong in that community?
Yeah, when our kids go to a high school, when our kids go to one of those high schools, there's absolutely no there's no daylight between them and a.
Oh, that's good to know. Good, thank you.
Yeah, they're 100%. They have
Part of the
access to
community.
anything else that a student there has. Yep.
Okay. Do you guys have an average of how many students you have coming from outside your community?
We're very outside of our community. We're sending the kids out. They're not coming into our.
Oh, you're
community.
sitting out. Okay, I had no idea. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So for Barrington, we have a typical graduating class of 100. 50 of them typically choose Oyster River and Durham.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I would say 30 of them go to Dover and 20 of them will choose Co-Brown.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son had a couple of friends that he went to St. Elizabeth Seton with that ended up at Co-Brown, pair of twins. And now their brother is at Oyster River this year. So, which was kind of funny. But it's nice for them to have that choice. Do you have like an average of, how many students that want to play sports actually get to play sports? Now, I know with the kids that I know personally in Barrington that play sports, all of them have been able to play the sports that they choose to on the teams that they go to high school with. So some played for, Co-Brown. I think Co-Brown and Oyster River combined their hockey teams.
Co-Brown and Somersworth.
Okay, yeah. And so they played hockey for them. They played football for the teams that they wanted to play football with, baseball. Do you have like an average? Sports is very popular here in Milton, and I think a fear for a lot of families for change is the fact that because it's a small school, all kids get to play sports if there's enough kids to have a team. And the fear is that if the kids go to a bigger school, they won't be able to play sports.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, this is going to be just more anecdotal because I have kids in high school and they have friends and, but, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, listen, if you go to a school that has a class of, 50 folks or a total enrollment of 200, there's a sport you're going to be able to play and you're going to be a varsity player probably. But yeah, I mean, depending on the school, your options may be different, and then also depending on the sport. Now, I can't reiterate this enough. There's no discrimination. So at any of the schools. So if you go to Dover and you're a terrible soccer player, you're not getting on. And if you're a great soccer player, you're getting on. I mean, Dover doesn't say, okay, we've got a soccer team because
everybody plays.
Because 20% of our kids are Barrington, 20% of our soccer players are going to be Barrington. It's the coaches. I mean, really, to be honest with you, the coaches, the teachers, the paras, the only people who really know who Barrington kids are the front office of the school and the SAU. I mean, there's really no other identifier in their system that really delineates Barrington kids, and coaches surely don't know these kids and what towns they're coming from. But I'll say this, we have never, for the 3 schools that we go to, if your kid goes into that school playing a sport, right? I mean, meaning like they didn't pick it up the summer of 8th grade going into 9th grade. They're typically on some sort of team. I mean, I know that Oyster River is a big soccer school. So if there's enough kids, and there usually is, they may not make varsity or JV, but then they'll create like a freshman a freshman soccer team, which has 4 billion kids on it, which is kind of like intramural from college days, right? But yeah, I've really never heard of anybody anecdotally or formally through the system come in and say, yeah, my son played football since he's 5 years old, and for some reason he can't seem to get on the JV team at Dover.
I know my son went to St. Thomas, so I know freshman year, they put everybody on a team. There are no cuts. Cuts don't come until JV. And even still, they work hard to get every kid on a team.
Yeah.
So
and that's, listen, it's interesting because that's one of the reasons why when we started the process, we had those community forums, and, we had the schools come in and, let them in their own words, just, talk about the merits of their schools. And then, parents had the opportunity to ask questions like that. I think all of the schools have cuts, but they typically go down to like, they'll open up freshman teams and do all this other stuff. So, but that's the real value. That's the real value of having those schools come in and do those presentations, if that's what you're going to do. And you know what? At the end of the day, it also provides, sort of a nice level competitive playing field. We've had schools come to us and say, we wish we had more Barrington kids. Then, the answer is attract more Barrington kids. Like, you have an opportunity to come in and talk to our 8th graders every year. You control your school, you control your curriculum, you control your extracurriculars. If you think you've got something compelling, then we'll give you the audience and make the case. So that's always I think that really keeps all of the schools on their toes.
Like I said, as we go, I know there's going to be questions that the group has, not only from a holistic standpoint, the whole aspect of if you send and other schools are your host, but yours is one where you have 3 schools to choose from. So I think there's going to be some questions. Nate, as the BA, is there some things that you would like to hear now, or you'll ask them as we go?
I've got nothing right now. They're doing a really good job explaining everything. So
Okay.
I've got nothing right now.
What I can do, Earl and Nathan, for folks on this call, is our contracts are on our website, and I can send. I know that question came up. I can send an example or two. They, as Mr. Gibson mentioned, they're public documents, but I can send either the Dover or Oyster River agreement just so you can see as an example of those contracts. Just so you have that information too.
I think that would be tremendous. I think it would really help us, the group, because we're just beginning to delve into this. And so it's important to get the resources.
Right.
Is there more things that any of the group would like to ask?
I just want to know, could you send the form that you have the students make out to make their choice? You mentioned earlier there was some form that kids make out, or is it?
Parents, maybe.
Do we have a form for all the schools, or we just have the form for Oyster River for the lottery? No, we do have a form for all the kids. Yeah, because what we have to do, what they have to do when they select is they have to provide proof of residency, right?
It's like a residency affidavit. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that has to be done. That's done every year. So families have to provide some documentation that they live in town.
Okay.
If we have any other questions and we end this call, I'm just saying can we contact you guys at any time if we have any other questions?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have, I believe, both Mr. Gibson's email address and my email address as well. So if there's any additional questions, any follow-up questions that you have, I'm certainly willing to help in any way we can.
Yeah, what they can do is they could give them to me, and then Tammy, you can send them out to them, or it's okay, I could always make a call and get some further things from you, Dan, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, this is great. I mean, we can't thank you enough. I mean, this really helps us, and this is the first steps on a long road.
Well, good luck.
Yep, glad to help.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now we can get back into our task forces and look at our organizational thing. I've touched base with, I called Laura and I talked to Nate. I know Nate sent a bunch of things to Laura on the drive. I talked to Sally, talked to Lynette. I talked to Travis. Unfortunately, he's unable to come. Amy's group, Larry Brown, will be joining you. We sent him the information. He had called me. He was very interested to be a part of this. So as we go, it'll more things will take form and we'll discuss it. But for now, why don't we start with each of the focus groups in.
Do you want to do the minutes first? It says minutes of last meeting.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I try to push them ahead because I didn't want to keep them around because they were.
Oh, no, they were after. They
Yeah.
were before the minutes of the meeting, so you were fine
Okay.
there.
Okay. Thanks, Tam. That sounds great. Go on.
You're on mute, Jan. Did you want to?
Are the minutes anywhere that we can see or?
Oh, well, they were put on the shared drive.
Okay, perfect.
So I guess we just want to see if we want to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Or if there were any corrections. Well,
I have a question actually. For
you
group
can't
5,
ask a question. No, sorry. Sorry.
for group 5, who's the facilitator?
It says Denise Trafton.
Because I have written down that it was Heather.
Denise wasn't
I'm
here
not
last time,
saying
so
I'm
I
right.
can't imagine it's her.
I don't
That's-
know. It's
yeah,
written
You're
out
right,
there.
I
Matt.
thought it was Heather, but
Okay.
I mean, that's
Heather,
the
is it
only question
you?
I had.
It can be. I thought it was changed on me to Denise when I saw the minutes. But whatever works best.
So,
I think
so
it's
I'm
Heather.
not losing it.
You're
then.
not losing your mind.
No,
Yeah,
that's
you're
what I heard on the recording.
I have
That
the
Denise-
chair as Heather
So
from my
I-
notes.
I
Heather
heard
too.
on the recording it said Denise, but I'll definitely change it to Heather for sure.
Yep. Mike Chisholm
Sorry,
has an
Heather.
H after the S, so CHISHOLM.
Where is he? Oh,
Up in the members and
CHIS.
attendants.
Yep, got it.
CHISHOLM.
Thank you.
Okay.
And does Lindsay Thompson have an H or no?
I thought I looked that up, but I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I'll look it up again,
Not on. Okay.
just to be sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. That was a good point. That's actually why I didn't connect with the facilitator of group 5 because I wasn't quite sure who that was. So, but I think Heather's on the call. Are you here, Heather?
I'm here.
Okay. So you're all set with that. We'll connect after this and we'll go over everything. Tonight we'll review 1 through 4, and then Heather and I will work on number 5, and we'll get back on that. Okay. So Tammy, are we all ready to go through the groups now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Did we approve it? I don't know. Did we ever vote?
No, we did not.
Okay.
I take a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting
With the corrections as noted.
with the corrections as noted.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Say aye,
Abstain.
Lynette.
I abstain.
She
I wasn't
abstains.
there.
That's right.
Heather, are you an aye or a nay?
Aye.
Okay. Any nays? No nays. Okay.
Okay, I guess we're ready, Laura, for focus group 1.
So Nate is a rock star, just so everybody knows. I'm sure you all do.
Jamie, did you hear that?
But he went to town and absolutely everything. Tammy did an amazing job finding newspaper clippings and everything else. So everything from the past, including and up to the most recent Spalding visit, is in our folder. So
Remember, that was with my guidance there, Nate. My guidance.
I don't remember that.
Hey, did you guys look in the library? Because I know a lot of things used to be kept in a file in the library.
Yeah, it's the same stuff that they had in the SAU pretty much. There was a binder. It did say that. You are correct.
No, this was a file that was kept by one of the ladies that used to go to all the school stuff. She passed away.
Oh, we'll have to look there.
Yeah,
We,
she kept everything.
yeah, we kept
But I
everything
didn't
too, at
think
the SAU.
yeah, so everything's
Don't
up
know
there,
that.
including the presentation that was done by Summersworth in 2014. So we've got a great start to, you know, what was in the past, and now kind of bringing it into the future. So,
When
but it-
would we like to discuss some of that in terms of everybody getting the background, or what would be your
I think that everyone should get onto the drive at some point, you know, before our next meeting, review everything that's up there, because there is quite a bit of documentation. It would be a little bit cumbersome to have, you know, people read. But, you know, you can go into our folder and take a look at everything, including tuition costs from, you know, that 2014 presentation. Just review everything, and then we can discuss at our next meeting.
Yeah, because, you know, Lynette had asked, basically, we're getting going here and everything is pretty voluminous. And if we break up into strands, people can fully investigate each part. And then
I thought this was going to be more, I thought this whole thing was put together by a group of people that were interested in doing the school that did not include the school. So that it was unbiased. And now I see that it's going to be run by the school and it's going to be completely biased. That is my problem. So I think I'm going to count myself out of this meeting.
what,
Because this is not what I was,
What do you mean?
this was not my intention at all. Well, I understood this meeting was so that, because there was never an agreement in the past years on sending our kids out and everything. And so I thought, okay, this group has been put together so that we could all come together and each one of us would take a phase of this group. That's what I was told at the meeting that I did attend. And instead I see that there's one person that is on our BOS board now here, which I think is a conflict of interest. And we have school people here that are telling us from the past, not willing to go on to anything else. I have a problem with that. I thought this was going to be an unbiased meeting, and I see it completely biased.
I don't understand what you mean by all I did was we got the history of the stuff that happened.
Oh, and that's no problem. But when I suggest
Okay.
something without even, no, we've got enough. How do you know? How do you know?
Well,
No, I think
enough
it's-
for that group, but the other groups are still gathering our
Mhm.
information.
That's correct. But
Lynette,
why do we
if there
have,
is
why do
something
we
that
have
you,
the school involved now? I don't work under you. Why do you have the school involved now? I thought we were gonna sit down and do this.
because
You
it
know what,
was,
if you're gonna interrupt me, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to leave because
I'm-
you may be used to being the boss, but you're not mine. Thank you.
I apologize for that. I just wanted to explain to you the reason behind why this. Okay. Never mind.
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay.
I guess I don't understand why what she's talking about with somebody on the Board of Selectmen. I'm on the Budget Committee. I'm not on the Board of Selectmen. I think, isn't she part of the new school board?
No,
No.
no. Well, we're gonna do a recount, so.
But Laura, I'm going to agree with you. I don't think, I mean, there may be people on this committee that have different preferences, but we haven't even gotten farther enough through the process
No.
to make any decisions or even any
Absolutely
recommendations.
not. No,
Okay,
The whole point was to have different views.
exactly.
well, we'll keep going. Let's stay within the facilitators. And basically, Laura, you've got facilitator of group 1. Is there anything else that, any other plans you have in wanting to share this?
Well, you know what? I will go to the library and check out and see if there is any additional information there that maybe that we haven't captured, Nate.
It's worth a shot. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
Worst is there's nothing, so.
Right. Yep.
I don't know if she actually even looked at what was on ours, because there is a lot. And if you look at what's referenced on the Fosters or Rochester, we have the documentation that backs up what was said within those articles, and we have.
I can't imagine there being more than what the SAU has.
I don't think there is, but I'll do my due diligence and I'll check.
Sure. Yep.
If that will make people feel better.
Okay, Tammy, would you like to read focus group 2, what the intent of it is, and then we'll look at where we are?
Can I just mention one other thing? Laura, I noticed that one of the articles was by Harrison Thorpe, and he is still a reporter in the area, so you might be able to reach out to him, and I have an email for him if you want. And he might have, more articles or anything that he may have written in the past.
Okay, Tam, do you want to read focus group 2?
I'm reading from the agenda. Is that correct? Is that where I'm supposed to be reading?
Yeah.
Investigation of schools willing to enter into an agreement. That's all it says, but it says the facilitator is Lynette.
Okay, so we'll have to, and who is the rest of the committee now that we have? Because I know we've been changing a little bit.
There's only 3 of them that I have written down: Mike Chisholm, Sally Riley, and Heather Middaugh.
Okay,
I had communication today with Lynette. She sent everybody information. I don't know if you saw it or not. She did some organizational kinds of things.
Oh, I did see that, yes.
Yeah. And so
Very well.
my communication with her had to do with looking at programs of studies from the different schools, as well as extracurricular activities, including sports and drama and all kinds of things. Staffing, what were their staffing patterns like? So it was just looking more at the educational part of it rather than just the statistics of the town. So I had suggested that maybe we should create some kind of a document where we could be consistent in looking at the different schools as to, what their program of studies offered, what kind of courses did they offer, what kind of curriculum documents did they have, what kind of professional development did they offer their staff. So just trying to create with the committee some kind of consistent document to make sure that we look at each school in the same manner. So I thought we were going to maybe talk about a little bit about that tonight or with the committee.
I have a question. I'm wondering if there's opportunity for the schools to let us know that information. Like if we take the same approach as Barrington to have other schools present out to us, kind of give you back
Yes.
time on that work, might be an
That would
opportunity.
save time, Heather. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Have them send us their program of studies, extracurricular list, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I thought it
Right.
was interesting that the schools kind of presented to them, like had that level of interest. So
Right,
Okay,
absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Would you like to chair the committee then? Would you like to be the facilitator then?
Are you talking to me, Earl?
Who is that?
That was Heather.
Sally, I'm sorry.
Sally and Heather.
Heather, yes, yes. I couldn't
But we
see
just
you.
made Heather the leader of
Group
5,
five.
right?
Is that something that you would like to do, Heather?
I might be able to help. I'm not sure if I could facilitate too. But maybe me and Sally could tackle it together.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Perfect.
And I could help on that committee too if you want. I can't facilitate, but I could help also.
Okay, I think we need to be careful not to be putting too much school in there. I think that it's better to
Okay.
keep Sally
Yeah.
and Heather in there because I think that, the part that Lynette was saying is that we don't want, I'm trying not to lead, I hope I'm trying not to lead the group.
It's the new one, so.
So we had a couple of new members. Did we want to add them somewhere? Because I still only see like there's only now 2
Abigail,
people
would you
on
like
group 2.
would you like to please introduce
Oh,
yourself?
yeah, I'm sort of Emily Mann's replacement.
Yes,
Whatever
she's
groups he was in, which I'm looking at
Oh,
them.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so group
I see.
3. I was looking at the meeting minutes.
Group
She was,
3, right. Emily.
yeah,
Got it. Okay, thank you.
she's
Mhm.
going to replace her.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is yes, so that will work. So actually, Abby, is that what you like to be called or no?
either one is fine.
Okay, okay. Travis couldn't be here tonight, but the Barrington model was the ones that the guest spoke about. The one we just heard.
Yeah.
So you can speak to him about that as will I. So Abby will be in group 3 and she'll facilitate with him. And in group 2, Heather, then you and Sally will take the lead, will take the lead on that. So in reviewing then, Laura will have the lead, Tammy in group 1. We're just trying to get our organization here. Group 2 will be Heather and Sally. Group 3 will be Abigail and Travis. She can join him in kind of being a co-chair. And also regarding group 2, I had Kathy Vigu send a draft out of asking various schools if they would like to be host schools. Did anybody or everybody get a chance to take a look at that? Has
Yes,
anybody
I
seen
read
it?
it.
Pardon?
I read it. Yes,
Okay.
I thought it was good.
Okay. Did you want to, who said that, Laura?
No,
Yeah, I said
Sally.
I looked at it, but Tammy said it.
Okay.
Or-
Sally.
Laura,
Or Sally, sorry.
That's
okay,
fine.
Sally. Okay, Laura, did you, who has it right there? Laura, do you have it right there or Sally?
Yeah, because I don't know if I saw that.
That's why.
So I have it.
Yes.
It really
Okay.
all, what it says is, please be aware that the Milton School District Explorations Committee is investigating information regarding the following petitioned warrant article to see if the voters of the Milton School District shall direct the Milton School Board to enter into talks with neighboring school districts to determine the feasibility of an area agreement according to RSA 195A for the purpose of sending our high school and middle school students out of district. Therefore, the key component to this ask will be ascertaining the specific SAU school districts what would be willing to enter into the opportunity for Milton middle and high school students to attend their districts. Within our study, based upon the willingness of the school districts to enter into area agreement, we would then determine whether the agreement would be an exclusive agreement or an agreement with 2 more schools. For your information, the current enrollment of grades 6 through 12 are as follows. Grade 6, 42, grade 7, 43, grade 8, 39, grade 9, 45, grade 10, 31, grade 11, 33, grade 12, 17, home education, 43. There are currently 43 homeschooled students in grades 6 through 12. Please be aware that I, along with members of our committee, will be available for further discussion. It should say further discussion for this possible collaboration. Thank you for your consideration as we seek to provide the optimum educational opportunities for all students.
Okay, so Sally and Heather, if you check that and then make the change that Laura said, or whatever else change you'd like to make, we can then send that out. Does that make sense? Do we all agree on that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Have-
I don't want to, I'm very sensitive. I think that we're really trying here to allow the community to have a voice, and I'm just trying to help get us organized into task forces, but I'm not trying to mandate or direct you to reach a certain conclusion or whatever the case is. I just did that just to help out, to get the ball, to get things going. So, okay.
Well, it's not going to be our decision anyways. We're going to find the information. This information is going to the townspeople. It's not staying
Correct.
with us.
Correct.
So-
Correct. At the next meeting, I will give you the legal timeline. That's very well put, Laura, of just what you said. How the town then votes and that, but I don't want to get going in a different direction, but
Right.
but everyone can see exactly to spell that out so they see where we go with all of this, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Could I
Okay.
Could I just add one more thing that I think it's important that, we have to ask school personnel some of these questions because you're the holder of information of the, what it's like at the school. You have that information. We don't, as community members, don't have that. And Laura, I think you're absolutely right. All our job is to do is, regardless how we feel, we're collecting the information, and it's going to be the townspeople that are going to make the choice.
Correct.
So it's not going to be any of us as individuals. But I know I had some questions and I got information from Jan, and I needed to get that from personnel in the school district. There weren't
Right.
anybody else that I could get the information from.
Right.
So, and I appreciated that opportunity to have somebody readily to ask and respond to me. So thank you, school personnel.
So that's
I
what
think-
we're-
Done a great job of being non-committal, unbiased, open-minded, like right around with just gathering information.
Yeah,
Right.
we have to have school personnel involved. It is what it is. I don't believe that anyone on this call has been biased at all. I think if anything, people are going out of their way to make sure that they're impartial.
Thank you. Thanks.
I did add that into the share drive. I just called it school search letter. I can title it whatever you want, but if you go into our area agreement drive, it is under group 2. So I just put the document there.
And
Okay.
have we
So
determined who we're going to be sending that to, or is that kind of the next step after drafting that document?
Now, who was that? Who just said that?
That was
Heather.
Pardon me?
That was Heather.
Heather, correct. Yes. So Sally and yourself will complete it as we just discussed, and then we can send that out. What we should probably send it out from. What's the suggestion there? Who should sign it? What do we think?
I think it probably should be signed by you, Earl.
Okay, I just making sure you give me permission to do that.
I agree.
You know. Yeah. Okay.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine. I just don't want to usurp any of your roles or
No.
And Heather, I think what you're asking is what schools are we sending it out to? And I think maybe we need to meet as a committee, a subcommittee, to talk about that, and then make a suggestion to the whole committee and get approval from the whole committee who we send it out to. Is that, Earl, what do you think?
I think maybe because, we want to move this on. That's a great suggestion. I think Lynette made a list of the schools, and we know basically the list of the schools. If people are comfortable to look at all the schools on the list, or I know Sally, you mentioned to me Prospect Mountain. I believe it was Sally. I lose track of who I talk to about what sometimes, but is that correct, Sally?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So if you and Heather want, we can begin to have the discussion now, or we can wait till April, till we meet again. I think it's April 19th.
Well,
But
Mike,
what do you prefer? Do you want to go over it with the group now, and we can move on and get that out to move things along?
well, no, but we all have emails. Why can't you just put a group email together and we can all reply? No?
Yes.
I mean, that'll make things go quicker and then having to wait till April.
Right.
That's my thought.
I think we should start moving ahead as quickly as possible to get the information out there.
Yeah.
I think it helps to have more than less. I think to be inclusive, to move the fences out, it doesn't mean that just because we send it out and get an interest, that the group is going to recommend that they choose these schools. I think the larger amount of schools that would want to do it, and if you choose to go that direction that you could go with, the better off you're going to be. You know what I'm saying?
We're just trying to get right now who's going to, or who wants to go into an agreement with us. So getting it out to whomever and how many we can is a good idea, because I don't think you're going to get a lot of them. Just my opinion, that you're not going to get a whole bunch of them back. You're going to get only a limited few.
So this letter doesn't ask for anything. I was just saying, do we say if you would be interested in pursuing this discussion with us, please comment or please respond? Or
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah. And I also have the list right here of who Lynette had on her list. So if we wanted to do it right now, we could.
Okay.
Sally, do you want to go in? You can type that at like the top of this, the school search letter. You put the name, you could put the schools at the top.
What can? How about I tell
Can you get
if
onto your
you do
Google?
it?
Okay, I'll type them. I'll go in and type as you talk. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. She had Alton School District.
Okay.
So that would be Prospect Mountain. I'm not sure why she had Barrington Middle School.
Yeah, no.
She had Dover, Farmington, Rochester, Somersworth, and she also had Wakefield.
Wakefield goes to Rochester.
Rochester, right.
So it'd be
yeah.
like Wakefield
did
Middle
know.
School.
Yes, but she had, the high school goes to Rochester.
Right.
What about Acton? I think
Yeah.
we should look at Acton too.
Oh,
Yeah, all the main
That's
towns.
They don't have a high school.
They don't? Or
They go-
do they go to Marshwood?
They go to Sanford.
Mhm.
Sanford? What
All right,
about
I'll go
Sanford?
middle.
Is it too far?
School.
It's pretty far.
Is it? Okay. I know Marshwood's a hall, so.
I mean,
What
do we know the exact distance? Or like the time frame?
Somebody could do a quick Google
I
distance
will
search.
do that.
what about, I was interested in Barrington, and I know the location is different than Milton, but to talk about Oyster River.
Oyster River's a great school, but
It is.
I mean, it's a straight shot down 125.
Right.
Right. You know, it's not probably no farther than Dover, really, to be honest. I don't think.
Did you have Noble on that list? Because I mean, if you talk, Lebanon's right across the river and they all
Yeah.
go to Noble.
Yes.
Noble's
No,
pretty far away
Noble
too, I
was
think.
not, but that's great, yeah.
School. Okay.
And do we know the intent of putting Barrington on there just to look into the middle school cost as well? Is that what the thoughts were?
I'm not sure, I'm not
Because
sure.
I thought it was just going to be for high school. I didn't think it was supposed to be for middle school, or am I incorrect?
I think we were going to look at both, but I think that
Oh,
it
okay,
really
right.
was more geared towards the high school. Not,
Right.
I don't think that parents are going to want to send their middle schoolers to a different school system than the high schoolers. My opinion, I don't know, but
I know that was part of in the group 5, the part of the information was to find out like the cost that, you know, sending middle school and high schoolers out of town and then sending high schoolers out of town and middle
Right.
schoolers, I thought.
No, you're right. That's what it says. You're right.
so it looks like for Sanford High School, it's only 16 miles from Milton, and it's 30 minutes.
So how
I guess
many
it's not-
miles?
16.1.
Okay. And that was to which one?
Sanford High School.
Okay, you want me to add that on there?
And we can look, right?
But that's a half hour without stopping, right?
Yeah, it's not just the distance. It's not easy to
Oh,
get
agreed.
unless you're in Milton Mills. I went to Sanford all the time when I lived there, but
Yeah.
from Milton, no.
So when we say Alton, we're talking about middle school and high school. Is that correct? And when we say Rochester, we're talking about middle school and high school, and Dover, middle school and high school.
That's what I put for both,
Okay.
because at least to be part of the conversation.
Right, okay.
Hey, Earl, if they're interested, they're gonna respond to you. Is that correct?
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we lose him? Are we sitting in the dark?
Okay.
Oh, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
All right, that's what I'm adding. If your school district is interested in discussing the
Did I-
possibility of forming an
Did
area.
I,
agreement-
did I unmute?
Yeah, you're good
Yeah.
now.
But I don't see myself. I think I disappeared.
It's okay, Earl. We don't have to see you.
You're in the dark.
That's probably a good thing, right, Nate?
All right, I added the line, if your school district is interested in discussing the possibility of forming an area agreement with this committee, please contact Earl Sussman at, and then I added your email address.
Okay, it's been a tough night. Now I lost my snapshot. We're losing our committee, and now I lost my snapshot. I don't know what's going on here. So, all right. So we have, is group 2 looking pretty good then?
Mm.
Heather and Sally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All righty. Group 3, Abigail, you just started tonight, and we put you solely in charge of group 3. What's your thoughts on that?
That's fine.
Okay.
And Abby, I
Okay.
shared the document with you, but I'm sorry to say that the group 3 folder is empty.
Okay.
Hey, did you want to work with me a little bit, and we could write up what they spoke about tonight? And if you want, did you want to connect more with them? Would you want
What
to
do you mean?
connect more with them, Abby?
I don't know what you mean, what you're asking.
Yeah, Dan and Dave, would you want to talk to them more about this, the one that they have, or at this point, are you good with that? With what
Well,
they
They've got information for us, so Abby,
Okay.
I would say make sure that we get all that information from them.
Okay.
Okay, and also too, you might want to talk to Bob Willett, who's the chair at Wakefield, because he has the 2 schools. He has Wentworth and Rochester that they work with. And once we ascertain which schools would even enter into host schools, then we can look further into the model of, would we want to have more than 1 school? Would we want 2 schools? Would we want 3? So basically, focus group 3 is going to take a look at that once we ascertain from group 2 which schools would want to join, would want to be a host school. So are you okay with that, app?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there anything else you want to ask us about focus group 3?
Nope. I'll connect with Travis as well. Was he at the last meeting? I didn't get a chance to watch the video from the last meeting. I only got the minutes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, he was he was called to work tonight, and he was really enthused about this, and
okay,
I'm sure. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, focus group 4, Sally, we've talked almost every 2 or 3 days, and you've done an extraordinary amount of work on this. Would you like to take the group through it? I mean, you've really worked so hard on it.
Before we go on to that, I was just wondering about group 2. Do we have Governor Wentworth on that list?
I can add it.
Yeah,
because that was looked at before, wasn't it? Governor Wentworth, and they turned Milton down or something. I don't know.
That's Kingswood, right?
Kingswood.
Kingswood is Governor Wentworth, yeah.
I know from working with Wakefield 5 years ago, 90% of their students have to go to Rochester. Nate remembers this because he was with me when we worked with them. And many more of the students wanted to go to Wentworth. So it's a desirable school. The question is room there, because I know, but now with the declining enrollment in most schools, Wakefield is pretty much committed to sending 9/10 of their schools to Rochester. It might open it up for us. And whereas before, from what you're saying, they weren't really psyched about to take more kids. They might now. Okay, thank you.
Was,
Great.
was Dover on that list by any
Yes.
chance? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so group 4, I really thought long and hard about how to do that and just breaking it out, because I wanted to make sure that people had a real comparison about these intangible factors. And so I wanted to talk about the intangible factors for students staying in the district, and then those factors for students going outside the district. So you could have a comparison between the two groups to keep it, above board, and not that anybody had any, preconceived notions or whatever. So anyway, on the drive, there are some forms that I made that you can go in and you can list for high school students, what factors for high school students for staying in the district. And then I broke it out for students going outside the district. So if you went in and looked at that, if you could fill out what you think are the intangible factors for students staying in the district, as well as students going outside the district. For example, if a student is going outside of the district, does it mean that they would have more opportunities for a wider range of course selection, or more opportunities for sports? Or a student staying in the district, would they have more of an opportunity to play a sport? I think that was brought up earlier about Milton students really wanting to play sports. And then I broke it out for not only high school, but for middle school too, because sometimes high school and middle school may have different intangible factors. So if you could just go on the drive and just add what you think, that would be great. And then I was asking Jan earlier about maybe we could get some students to also talk about what they think about, staying in district as well as going out, and what are those tangible factors. For example, one thing was, pride in Milton. That came through pretty loud and clear with a couple of people who did put information on there that, there's a long history of people graduating from Newt and being very proud of it and want to continue that tradition. And then we could even look at more people in the community just to get some more information or feedback. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So we're not limiting this at all, like for special ed or anything. I have a child that's in special ed, so.
No, it could be, if you think staying in the district is, an intangible factor for a special ed student, then you need to put that on the form. You're saying that maybe they would have more services staying in Newt, or, or if they went outside the district, would they have more services? It's however you feel. I think it's just a matter of collecting people's thoughts about this. So that's why I wanted to see what people thought if students stayed in the district or if they went out, so you could compare the two.
I didn't want to comment. I didn't want to disagree with Dave, but he said, once the students go to another school, they're no longer Barrington students. And that's different from what I've heard. I did talk to some people who've been to other schools. And for example, there's a student who's an athlete, a cheerleader, very involved from Wakefield at Rochester. And she said she always, the kids from Wakefield are made fun of. They're the others, they're the have-nots. When Rollingsford went to Somersworth, they felt that way. When Middleton went to Farmington, they felt that way. Ossipee going to Kingswood, they feel that way. So I know he says that there's no difference, and maybe it's because they're Barrington, I don't know, but there's a lot of kids who do go to other districts and they're viewed as the have-nots. So
I mean, I did go to Dover. I went to Dover High School, and I never knew actually where other kids came from. So I know, like, from my aspect, I never knew which town they lived in unless I became friends with them.
Where did you come from?
I lived in Dover.
You lived in Dover, went to Dover. Okay.
Yeah, and I never
grew up,
knew.
and I grew up in Barrington and went to Spalding, and
You never felt that.
I was never, treated any differently because I was a Barrington kid compared to a Rochester kid.
Yeah,
I don't know if she just feels, I don't know. That's how she feels when she gets on the Wakefield bus, but maybe that's just her own feeling.
My husband lived in Barrington and went to Dover, and the same with him. He never felt any sort of difference just due to where he lived.
Well, I wonder if it's because Dover was already a part from Barrington, so they all knew that they were going there. But if Milton is going to this place, it's brand new. I'm just saying, for instance, it's brand new, they're new kids.
I don't know. Hopefully they would be welcome with open arms, so.
And I think we also need to think about the kids in Milton, that Newt, who maybe haven't found a group of kids that are accepting of them.
Yeah.
And so with going to a larger school, sometime you get another chance of connecting with other kids who may have more interests than, the same interests as you do. So I think there's both sides of that argument.
In other words, there's more options just because of numbers.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, my daughter definitely experienced that coming from her previous school, which was a small private school, and she had 8 kids.
Oh, wow.
So I said, when I had a meeting with Jan when we went to the school, I was like, the school's really small. And she's like, what do you mean by small? Do you know how small our school is? I'm like, oh no, 8 kids.
Bigger than that.
Yeah, her 9th grade class was 8 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think this is where we could probably end up getting a little biased on.
I was just sharing what.
No.
You guys
I'm not
have
saying
real
that
world. You got
I'm
first
not saying
person
that you
stuff.
are. I'm saying that this could end up getting that way if we don't include some of the students and things like that. I think that we need to, because there are families here in Milton that have been here for generations, right? And you're going to get the same answer from them, which is, it's a tradition graduating from Newt. And, and that's where my kid's graduating from. That's where my grandkids are graduating from. And I don't care, where what we need to be doing is looking at the kids to say, all right, guys, if you had the choice to go to Dover, you're 14 of you are already going to Dover to take classes there. How many are graduating this year? How many students do we have? 17?
Yeah, but that's not
It's 17, but some of them are in as juniors because they didn't earn it. So I'll probably have 26 to 28 graduating.
Okay. Yeah.
But the big thing with this class will be the 100th year of singing New Beloved at graduation. So there are some, this is a huge milestone for this one, but
yeah. And the other thing that we need to look at too is the shape of the building, and the fact that the building needs a lot of work. And I mean, can the town
so
foot
doesn't
the
the
bill?
elementary school?
Yeah, both. Yeah, no, the buildings need work. They need a lot of work. And so we need to look at those as well. Do we foot the bill to build a new building? Then you lose that tradition of having, that old Newt High School, but to retrofit that school, could be millions. So we have to look at these things too.
And I think, Laura, like you said, we present the facts, the
Yep.
information that we gather, and then it's going to be up to the town.
They have to, they have to make that decision, and
Yep.
they have to own that decision, right?
Right.
After this, no more bitching. You know,
Yeah.
so pardon my French, but you know what, guys? You know,
Well, if you look at the information, they done it in 2008, they've done it in 2014, and now we're doing it in 2021. So when's the bitching gonna stop?
yeah, well, when
we do this, we lose staff, just so you know. I
Yes.
already have about 7 people asking for letters of recommendation for next year because we're doing this. Right,
Yes.
so it's just, and they told me when we did this back in, was it 2016? We lost staff then too. So
Yeah.
every time this comes around, a group, probably, you know, our best staff who can go get another job someplace else are like, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But, you know, and again, you know, maybe we put in this that, you know, okay, guys, you know, we've done the due diligence. Here it is, you know. If the town wants to look at this every 10 years, there's going to be a consequence for that. And that consequence is you lose staff, you do this, you do that.
The consequences is, okay, so you don't want your kids to go to another school, then why haven't we fixed the school? Or why haven't we done this? Why haven't we done that?
That's the other thing too, is that when we present this out, you know, you say, you know, you gotta let people know, you know, yes, it's gonna cost this, you know.
Oh, you're
the school
right.
the
And
school
that's what we
budget is
did the
11
last
million.
time.
The school budget is $11 million, right? How much is it going to cost to retrofit and upgrade the schools, the middle school and high school? And when's the time frame that this stuff needs to be done?
Is there any information on that? Like, is it worth putting together some sort of like group for that portion, or how would we even know that?
Seems like that would be an important thing to put into this. I mean,
We
We're
already
talking
have something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, we've actually been talking to our facilities manager
Yeah.
because this round of grants and the next round of COVID grants includes building stuff. So we're like, let's get your wish list.
We had
So-
a facilities engineering study done
Mhm.
a few years back that we could look
I want
into.
to say, I want to say. almost
Isn't
right
it
before I
already,
came,
isn't it already
that with the
uploaded?
elevator and stuff.
Yeah. And the public needs to know also that if we ship out middle and high school, we lose the building. It goes to the
Right.
trustees.
Right.
Does that include the middle school wing that was put on in 2005?
I believe it's for the whole building, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's uploaded too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's like what Laura said. We gather all the information we can and give it to them and let them decide.
yep, no, I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
and then we wash our hands of it.
I think, I don't know if we want to move on. I mean, we could talk about this for.
We probably should.
Add things to the document. There you go.
Just one last comment, sorry.
No
The
worries.
thing that's different about this though is there's a
Hold
possibility,
on.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sally.
There's a possibility of having school choice. So I remember the last time when this was looked at, and it was just looking at Rochester, at Spalding. And there were some very, set opinions about that. But with school choice, when you're offering, parents and students an opportunity to choose from 3 schools, say, then I think that does put it in a different category.
Providing we get choice
Yes,
of schools.
yes. But a lot of schools are having problems with enrollment. So I think
True.
we maybe stand a better chance this time.
Mhm. Okay, Earl. You're on mute.
You turned it back on the mute, Earl.
You turned it back on mute.
How about now?
There we go.
Yes.
I'm back. Okay. How about group 5? We're going to work on 5, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Who's working on 5?
I
Who do
am
we have?
Heather. I am part of group 5.
Okay. Now we have Larry Brown too. So Larry Brown, who was supposed to be on, that was very enthusiastic about being part of the group. We will network with him. What are the things I'd like to incorporate into group 5? And maybe Abigail would like to be on this because she's been involved as far as the state goes. One of the things that we should look at, and I mentioned at the last school board meeting, I think I mentioned here, is this vouchers and student accounts, parent accounts for students. And a lot of legislation is being looked at, and Larry brought this up in the debate, not the debates, but when the group met to discuss the board seat, and also he brought it up at the deliberative. So I don't know, Abby, if you want to work with group 5 too, with Heather and Larry, and I'll work with it in taking a look at the effects of the legislation going on as it might apply to the committee's work. How does that sound to the group?
I'm also on group 5, just so you know. I didn't make it to the last meeting. And I think there's a mess up with my email. So I did email you, Jan, if we can change it, because I am not always getting everything. But I'm happy to do whatever.
Yeah, I
Oh,
need to
that-
update my email too, because Emily actually texted you my old email address, which I sometimes have troubles with, particularly on my phone, which is why I was late getting on the call, because I had my Gmail open account waiting for the link
All
to
right,
pop.
Abigail, what email do you want?
AGRooney77
At Gmail?
at gmail.com. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
better one.
All right,
Oh.
Amy, how about you?
It's amy.thompson@granite.edu.
Thompson with an H at Granite, GRANITE
Yep,
dot
.edu.
edu. Okay,
That would explain it, Abby, because I thought Steve Gagnon had sent it out. I sent it out. And we were sending it to A. Rudy at Metric.
Yeah.
Metric, yeah. So
Yeah,
I think
it's still active. It's just, it's not user, particularly on my phone. So yeah, well, that tells you how old, like how long it's been since Emily's emailed me. We usually just text.
so
or Facebook.
Abigail, that is the email address I shared this file with.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I
He
think
was
then
not, though.
on focus group 5, then just to go over it, then who would we have? Tammy, let's make sure we have the right names.
You have Heather Mitta as the facilitator, then you have Amy Thompson, Nate Castle, Larry Brown, Denise Trapton, and Abigail Rooney. So we
Okay.
have a lot on 5. I don't know if we want to divvy up a little more or if you just want to leave it.
The people here, what are your feelings? The ones that she said regarding group 5?
I don't know anything about Denise Trafton, so I don't know if she wants to stay there or move, but
I mean, I suppose we can ask her. Her son, I think, graduated last year.
I think I worked with her at one point.
Yeah,
too, so.
she's
Well,
my
I know
neighbor.
because her son went to Good Shepherd School, where I was the financial administrator for 10 years. So
Okay.
I know Ethan from Good Shepherd.
So I can ask her which one she would rather be on. I can do that.
Yeah, and that way we can, Heather, now with Larry not being here, how does it sound? Why don't we have Amy perhaps work with you on that one, Heather? Does that sound good, Amy?
That works for me.
Okay, great. So you could facilitate that one with her. Okay, let's go over the task on that, Tammy.
It says investigation of combining middle high school students with another school district. That was A, and B, bringing middle/school students, middle high school students to the Milton School District.
Okay, we would like to add C, the effect of pending legislation on the warrant article task, how the current legislation could affect that. And then one more thing that has been brought up to be by some community people is, would there be a possibility, we're looking at middle and high school, but would we want to look at, if that was the choice that people made, keeping sixth grade here? Would we then look at perhaps placing the sixth grade at MES, and then 7 through 12 would be the ones that we would investigate? I mean,
I think we look at whatever the what the town wants.
yeah,
So I think that if the town wants to keep the middle school children here, even through 8th grade, I think that, that should
Correct.
be their choice.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
my
sorry,
feeling.
Laura, what I meant was the third thing would be, number one, would be moving to high school, right? I mean, the high school students having choice. Number two would be 6 through 12 having choice. And number three would be 7 through 12 having choice. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
A third option would be to keep the 6th grade here, because there probably could be room at MES to keep them. And why
Well, isn't that what's already on there? I'm just reading from the agenda, so I thought that that's what it already said on there. Other than it did not state anything about the legislation, which that's a new one that you added.
I think we need to discuss that a little bit, because middle high school right now is 6 through 12.
Correct.
What does that state, the warrant article?
What are you talking about? The warrant article that was,
That's the basis of our group.
Well, the warrant article states a feasibility study for middle and
right,
high school or high school.
Correct.
So I think that we can go with, you can determine what is, middle school, elementary school and middle school, however you see fit. But I mean, I don't think that there's an issue with saying, hey, we would prefer to leave the 6th graders in Milton at MES if we've got room. Because you've got on the agenda that, we're going to determine whether or not the cost of retaining middle school students, grades 6 through 8, then we're going to determine the total cost of retaining high school students 9 through 12.
which is right. This is
Right.
on group 6 though, but group 5 is the only 2 that I read. Why? And
Yeah.
I'm looking at the agenda from last time. Why is there a group 6 on there? Because we intertwined them.
changed
We
that.
did,
That's
we combined them.
That's
Yeah.
right.
We combined that. We knocked out 6. So
That's right.
I think the question to the group is what Laura just said. Is it inherent in the discussion regarding middle school, and we don't have to discern prescriptively to take out grade 6, that it's inherent that it is part of the discussion? Is that okay with everybody?
Fine with me.
Say that again, please.
Do we have to discern, do we have to disaggregate 6th grade from the delineation of middle school, Or should we just keep it as,
I think we
as
should
that?
keep it 6 through 8 because I don't think there's any room in elementary school for 6. That's why they moved them over in the first place, was my understanding.
Well, I think that's why we need to take a look at it, because we have a declining enrollment and there might be a possibility. I've had a little bit of a discussion with Mr. Safine about that, if that would come to the court, but I think I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. I think that it needs to be looked at.
I was gonna say, my middle school classes are my biggest classes. They're not my smallest.
I don't think we should. I mean, because like I said, I don't think there's enough room in the grade school for
I
a
think
6th grade.
also matter the schools that we'd be looking at sending them to, how they're structured. You know how some
That's
middle
true.
schools, some are middle schools 6 through 8, some school districts start at 7th grade. So you'd want it to kind of match
Right.
up where they go, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I think it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense, because if you're worried about kids assimilating into a middle school and, you know, it's a 6 through 8 that they're going to go to, and you're going to keep 6th grade in Milton and then send them as 7th graders,
Right.
they're
It just,
already being set up for being different because
Right.
they're coming in as 7th graders, not with all the 6th graders.
That's exactly correct. You're both
Yeah.
right. You're both right. Some of it is going to depend on how they are shaped, they are formed.
Right.
You know, the delineation. I think both of you have brought up some good points. Thank you. Okay, are we good? So we're all set? Is there
Quick
anything?
question. This is Heather. I know we were chatting about earlier that there is currently like already information on the cost to like repair the building. Is there any opportunity to create a section on the Google Drive for that information, since, you know, we will have to take that into consideration at some point?
I put it under group 5 costs. So I
Oh,
added
awesome.
a document that said, I think I called it building maintenance. Let me look here.
Perfect. Thank you.
So if you go into 5, I made a document for building maintenance upgrades, for special education, for transportation, for tuition. If there's any other ones you think of, let me know.
Perfect.
And I can make those folders if you'd rather have them as folders than as documents, but that's probably what I should do.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
Can somebody reach out to Lynette and just make sure that she's okay, and
I'll
maybe
reach out to her.
understands that this really is an impartial, you know, review.
That's an
I hate-
excellent point.
I hate leaving anything like that. So
Who would like to do that?
Tammy said she would.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Are we all set for April 19th?
So
Okay.
what should we have ready, available, and whatever for the 19th?
All of the things in each group that we discussed.
So have everything in our folders that we need. Okay.
Yeah, everything that we went through, and we had the takeaways of what each of the group would be doing from that point. We reorganized them, and we had the takeaways of what the group would be, and then everybody can send out the appropriate information. Does that make sense to all the facilitators?
Yes.
Good, good, good. Okay. So thank you all, and I hope we have all the contact numbers right. And we have the formation, we have the up-to-date listing of the groups, and we should be good. Thank you all for all your hard work. This is a difficult task, and of political football, but we will do a good job on it. And I want to thank you all very, very much.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Have a great night.
You too.